Hello and welcome to another episode of Brand Retro. Today I have Kira Nyland on podcast, and she is probably, with the best definition possible, probably the right hand of what's happening today with Cyberdogz, keeping everything going, client relationships, all this good stuff. And one of the things we've been talking about is kind of the idea of concept to completion. When we step into a relationship with the client, what does that look like? What questions get asked? What's that process? So as we were kind of discussing that idea and kind of what that looked like, I'm like, well, hey, let's take the opportunity, make this a podcast, and maybe we get some good content out of it and something we can share with our listeners. Kira, welcome.
Hi, thanks.
So the idea of, the concept of completion and you coming from the outside and not necessarily having, a great understanding of how all this works, what questions pop up to you, and which questions do you feel like as an outsider we should start with?
Obviously, I know the ins and outs of the types of work that we do, or the types of work that you do, the different services that we offer. But what we haven't really discussed, or what I'm actually not sure of, is how does that translate to taking somebody who comes to you and says, hey, I want to start my business. Here's what I want to do. Help me get from, taking it from an idea to basically kicking off your business. Like, what are things that you talk to them about? What are some of the questions that you're asking them? How do you move them from, get them moving to understand their brand and helping them with marketing and things like that?
Yeah, so I think it's a combination of things. I think most people, when they come to me with a blank slate, they would like me to believe it's a blank slate, but it's really not. It's only as much as they're willing to show me, because if they've gotten that far, if they've gotten to the point where they're coming to somebody like myself or a marketing company, they've given it a lot of thought. So they already have some ideas. They've already got some things figured out. And what I try to work with them on is like, hey, let's bring those things to the table. Let's figure out, of those things, which are necessary in your industry. What are your competitors doing? Let's identify kind of the milk, eggs, and bread of what we need to do to get you started. Then let's figure out the parts that are highly unique, because those are going to be the differentiators in, how you separate yourself from the competition, how you stand out, how you kind of make that initial splash. Because one of the things I caution anybody that comes to me with an idea like this, or any client, is that you don't want to blend in. I mean, you do want to some degree, play off what the competition is doing and look at the industry and try to, get in that game. But the last thing you want to do is blend in. So we have to look at it a little differently, and we have to come at it with those kind of unique, game-changing propositions and push those things to the top.
So if I came to you and said, all right, I'm ready to go, I want to start my business, here's what I want to do, here's the name of my business, or maybe I don't know what the name of my business is, I need some help, and here's the end result of what I want to do. What are, I don't know, maybe say 5 key things that we would do within that process if I came to you and said, hey, this is the business idea that I have. And then on top of that, are there any things that you do or you have done to help somebody who wants to start a business that maybe don't fall under that marketing umbrella?
Yeah, so I would say that, and to be honest, if I was to sit down and kind of try to identify the commonalities of every client, every project, or whatever, I could probably come up with 3 to 5 standard questions. But the reality is every client is different. But what's not different is that every client that comes to me has a certain level of passion and a certain level of input that they've put into this business from a personal perspective. So a lot of times, they might even come to me with name ideas, and they named it X, Y, and Z because their daughter's birthday is this date. And like, they have substance behind why they got to where they got to and why they're now coming to me. So when I meet with the clients initially, like, yeah, I'm listening. I'm trying to capture their story, but I'm really trying to extract those pieces of the puzzle, because it's really important for me to know, like, kind of why and the passion and kind of the fuel behind it. But those things, as they come out, also work as kind of milestones and kind of talking points as to, okay, that's really unique. Let's make sure we make note of that and work that into the name or the logo or the slogan. And because we're really trying to extract those areas that not only make it unique, but completely connect back to the individual who has the idea, the entrepreneurial spirit, the brand, whatever it is, because it's going to create a more authentic experience and give substance to the brand as it launches. But also, when they know that their kind of secret sauce is built into it, they instantly love their brand more. They instantly have more passion and more fire towards what they're doing. Like, their approach is so much different than if you just, Google business names and pick one. So if we can extract those little pieces and make that journey very personal, the brand, as it develops, as it launches, as it kind of comes to life, is a much more authentic experience, not only for the business owner, but for the people then they introduce the business to. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So now I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit, because I know that we obviously have a questionnaire that goes out to new clients. So what is the method to the madness in this process of your question asking about their dream car?
Part of it's to get them to just put their swords away, to put their guard down and think different. But there is a method to it, because, whether it's cars or what kind of movies they like, those little nuances about each individual tell me something about the person. It tells me a little bit more about, what brands they're attracted to, what, kind of vibe or what feeling the logo should have. So a lot of times, and I don't expect necessarily everybody to know this, but a lot of times when customers come to me, I mean, a logo is a very flat, static concept to them. It's just, hey, I need a logo. I'm starting a business. It doesn't carry any kind of weight, right? And the logo actually does carry a ton of weight. A logo should be dynamic and connect back to the individual, back to the brand, back to the passion. The logo should tell a story. So asking them those questions, sending that questionnaire out that really kind of asks some oddball questions, gets them to tell me more about themselves without them really realizing it or feeling weird about it, because they're just answering the questions at a very surface level. Like, what's your favorite car? What kind of car, what sound would that car make if you were to turn the engine on? Those are the kinds of things that kind of break down the process a little bit, but tell me more about the person. And then what I do with that is I take that information and it positions me for the next phase, the next set of questions, or sometimes it even identifies, contradictions, where they might come to me and be very stoic and very reserved, but then they'll tell me their favorite car is a Bugatti or something. And I'm like, okay, that doesn't match. Tell me about that. And then all of a sudden we're on a different conversation, a different track. And personally, I mean, yes, I'm trying to get to the finish line on how to create the best brand logo experience possible. But selfishly too, I am now in the process of building a relationship with the client, because I'm getting to know them by asking them all these weird questions.
That makes perfect sense. You don't really know somebody until you're, having a conversation that doesn't pertain to what you're actually talking about, if that makes sense. Just kind of shooting off the hip, and like you're having a beer somewhere at 5 o'clock or something. You get a really good sense of who that person is and what they're looking for. So in regards to that, let's talk about during the, from concept to completion. Obviously there's going to be hiccups, right? People, they don't like what you're doing. They don't like what you put together. What are some of the biggest hurdles that you've come across with people, that needing your services, and how would you, what is your way to work through them?
I don't know that I'd call it a hurdle, but I think it's a common part of the experience, is that everybody comes with kind of an idea of what they think they need, right? So they show up and they say, here's the 10 things I need. Give me a quote or give me a proposal on that. And I rarely do that. I always come back and say, okay, well, first of all, tell me about your business. Tell me why you think you need the things you just listed. And then let me tell you what I think you need. I'm a big analogy guy. If anybody listens to this podcast, they know that. But I always liken it to like going to the grocery store. Everybody can relate to this. If you go to the grocery store hungry with no list, you're going to come home with a ridiculous amount of things. And not some of it's good stuff. I mean, yeah, nice box of Fruit Loops. They're delicious. Good for you. However, you are going to come home with a list of things that you have no plan for. You just went there hungry. You had no list. So you just filled up the cart, you pushed it out the door, you went home, and you're like, okay, I don't have anything to make spaghetti. I don't have anything to make. I have nothing to eat, even though I just went to the grocery store, right? Like that, you want to have a list. And again, not everybody can plan out their whole life, but initially you should go with the idea of that. I know I'm low on these things. I know in order to make proper meals for the next week, I'm going to need ingredients for spaghetti, for potatoes and chicken or whatever it is, so that even though some extra things might fall in your cart and you might go home with a little bit more than you thought you needed, you're going to make sure you took care of the substance and the true things that you need to get you through that next week, that next month, or whatever it is. So the process for me is always to like take a step back and let's talk about those things you think you need. Let's identify the ones that truly, kind of fit, and which ones are a phase 2, phase 3, phase 4 item. And part of the reason I do that is to help the client identify the most important elements to get their business rolling, so they can wrap their minds around and digest the expense and the effort that it takes to do all these things, and so that it buys them time to build up the intelligence to know what comes next and why it comes next. My fear with clients is always that I don't want to give you everything you ask for if you don't know why you're asking for it, because then half the stuff we do has no impact. It doesn't move the needle. And yeah, from a business perspective, I should probably not care and just take the money, take the project. But that's not how I want to operate. I want to go back and space it out and logically give them the tools that they need to not only succeed, but so that they can digest the process and not feel bitter about it. I think, a lot of clients, they don't know, right? So they end up in these situations where somebody told them they needed X, Y, and Z, and they just went by that recommendation. And without really knowing, they might have purchased something that they didn't need or they didn't need yet in the process. So that's part of why those questions exist. That's partly why, we walk them through exercises like the grocery store example, so that it helps them relate to, okay, that makes sense. I know I might need these things down the road, but I don't need them yet. Is that correct? And then we can, graciously say, yes, here's what we need to do.
That actually leads into another question that I had for you in regards to this. But what do you feel is the biggest reservation someone has about hiring you or somebody like you? Whether or not they're, I guess since we're on the topic of concept to completion, whether or not it's a startup or maybe it's somebody who's come to you after 10 years and kind of goes, man, I need a refresh. And then you have this conversation. So what do you think are the biggest reservations people have?
I think they're connected, but they're kind of the same answer. One is that they don't know what they don't know. And the second is trust. And they kind of work together. But trust is a huge, huge issue. So I get clients that come to me that are just kicking tires. They're looking for prices. They're looking for, let's see what he tells me versus what somebody else told me. I get people that come to me and are truly looking for a fire sale. They want, just for good math, they want $10,000 worth of services, but they've only got $1,000 to spend. I get people that are looking for an answer that's different. They just want to be told something different, whether it fits their business or not. I think it's a lot of things like that, but it all comes down to trust and whether or not they believe the recommendation and the information I'm giving them, or do they trust that I have their back? It's easy for me to sit back and tell my clients that I don't want to take advantage of you. I don't want to fail on any level in this, because my job is to hit home runs. And if I hit home runs, that means more projects, more clients, more, that's the fun part for me. I can't control whether or not they believe that. And I can't control whether or not sometimes if they've been burnt previously, whether it's financially or had a bad experience with another agency or whatever it is, they come into the discussion with some of that baggage. So my onboarding process and kind of what we do with clients partly is to build the trust of helping them understand that we're in this thing together and it's a collaboration and it's a partnership. It's it's I think odd at sometimes when I don't sell the client that hard. I mean, I will provide them the information, but I will not convince them that they need to work with us because it's their choice. I've given you all the information, I've given you our input. I don't want to pressure you or manipulate you into saying yes if you're not 100% in it, or if you're not trusting us quite yet, or whatever it is.
Yeah, because all that's going to do is put their guard up the moment that they go in, and it's probably just going to put a cloud over the whole process, and could negate some of the potential that's there.
Well, right. And it's the trust is important because it's like, you wouldn't let just any stranger babysit your kid or pick your kid up from school, right?
Definitely.
So it's the same thing with marketing, is that they don't want to hand this baby over to me if they don't 100% trust me. And there's a lot of, what we do as marketers, creatives, whatever, that we have to be all in or not. We can't halfway do it. So if that trust isn't there and we're only halfway doing it, it doesn't work.
So, to protect the innocent, what would you say has been, I don't want to say your most favorite, but for lack of a better word, but kind of your most enjoyable concept to completion? What made it your favorite or your most enjoyable, things throughout the process? If you had to, of all the clients you've had, all the things you've done, whether or not they have been clients who have actually, taken the bait, and worked with you, or ones that have just said, "Hey, I just can't do this right now," or whatever. Just because they didn't decide to work with you doesn't mean that it wasn't something that you thoroughly enjoyed doing. So, what would you say was the favorite, and why?
Well, I'm gonna throw one out there that actually didn't even come to fruition. Just because the excitement and the process of it was a lot of fun, and I think it was exciting for the team. I think it was exciting for the people that I was networking with at the time because I had shared the information with them and whatnot. But uh, Jenny McCarthy, this is a couple of years ago now, but she started a kind of a seltzer line, like a Truly kind of a thing called Blondies. And the person who was running at the distributorship, the person who was running the marketing found us on Instagram and reached out to us. And initially, when they had reached out to us, they had said, "Hey, we love your account and we'd really like to connect with you on this project." And for anybody who's on Instagram, that you get solicited on there all the time. So when I got that first, message, that direct message, I kind of looked at it, and I mean, I thought about it for all of a split second, and I thought, well, whatever, and just moved on. I didn't give it a second look. Another week later, I got another message that said, "Hey, I just want to make sure you got my message. Here's what we're thinking." And it was very brief, still kind of cryptic, but she actually signed it with her name that time. And I was like, well, that's different. So typical computer marketing guy, I took her name, popped it in Facebook, and I'm like, I was just trying to figure out if she was a real person. And when I found out she was a real person, again, I still didn't know the details, but I was like, well, maybe this one's real. I don't know. I'll respond. So I responded, and yeah, it turned out that she was doing some marketing work for Jenny McCarthy's seltzer line or booze line called Blondies. And she had said basically, yeah, Jenny had just launched this booze line called Blondies, and we're dabbling in apparel. We've got some artwork we need created for this, that, and the other thing. Our website needs help. And which I thought was cool, because they came to me like any other young business, young entrepreneur, is that, hey, we got it this far. Now we're in over our head. We've got problems. We need help. Please help us. And the fact that they found us on Instagram, made that connection, was cool. So there was a factor of it as, hey, I just love the journey of how we got here. I love the fact that it's connected to Jenny McCarthy. I love the fact that it's a seltzer line. That might be kind of fun. And what they were doing was super creative. Like their artwork, the branding was super cool. So it was going to be a fun client if we land them. So communication back and forth with me and this gal went pretty well. And out of the gate, she basically said, throw everything but the kitchen sink at us, because we want options. We want to grow this thing. So I came back with not only kind of the tactical website support stuff, but we came back with a lot of custom designs for apparel. We did some custom designs for, cans and POP and some different things. And this presentation, this proposal, when we brought it back was, man, I think it was like 10, 15 pages. It was huge. And to all regards, I thought it was a home run, but all of a sudden communication stalled. This is after we submitted the proposal. Communication stalled. We were getting a lot of short answers back, like, hey, it just hasn't hit the right desk yet. And the red flags started to kind of pop up. Not necessarily that we had done a bad job or that the relationship wasn't good, but just that there's something else going on here that we're not aware of. And whether or not we get our foot in the door or whatnot, we don't know. So this went on for probably a couple months. And then unfortunately, we got that one last message, and it wasn't a rejection. It was the gal who was kind of running interference and kind of our advocate on the inside changed jobs. So she came back to us and said, I am so sorry. I left the proposal X, Y, and Z with this person, and it's technically on their plate now. I took it as far as I could before I left, but I'm no longer with. So I appreciated the fact that she had reached out and kind of at least explained some of the delay and the fact that now our person on the inside was no longer there. But now we're left with this kind of gaping black hole of, I don't know if we're going to hear anything or not. I hope we hear something. I continued to follow up on it for probably a couple months afterwards to try to see if I could get somebody else to respond to me or even find out who that new person was. But we never heard anything back. But I look back at that as a win because, hey, we got an opportunity to submit a pretty deluxe proposal and some pretty fun ideas and I don't know if that proposal ever made it to Jenny McCarthy or if she ever saw it or whatever it was. But we were in the hunt and we were hunting big game for a few months there. And it was just a fun process and a fun journey. And yeah, we went home empty handed, but it was still fun. And I still look back at that proposal and that artwork. And I think about, man, I wouldn't mind doing one of those again. But also, if I ever get the chance to connect back with that brand, I'm going to dig that stuff out because we did some, we invested a lot of time into it to try to show them what we were capable of. I know there's some winners in there. We just have to get it on the right person's radar. And again, that's a failure story, but at the same time,
it's funny. People who listen to this, they're not gonna see you, but obviously you and I are looking at each other as we do this. But you can see the excitement and the joy when you tell the story about how proud you are and how fun it was. And like you said, even though you didn't get it, you still chalk it up as a win because of everything that you went through and the experiences that you had and the learning parts that were there.
Well, those are your launchpad opportunities. You know what I mean? Like, even though we didn't get it, when those launchpad opportunities come, like, yeah, those are the fun ones. Even if you don't get them, different projects, different brands and stuff throughout my career, that happens sometimes. But every once in a while you get an oddball like that and it feels like an oddball. And instead of being scared of it and thinking, well, this is kind of a weird thing, I'm not going to involve myself, we kind of took the other route. And I don't know where this is going to go, but it's almost too cool to not participate. So let's take the chance and see what happens. And that's why I'm not bitter about it. We spent time on it. So it did cost us some time and money, but it was an opportunity and it's a good story. And we still have, the artwork and the different things that we did to share with people, and we have shared it with people. We actually have some screenshots and some different things that we did in that proposal on our website so that people can check it out. And it's a good, conversation starter because they've even come back and said, what's this about? That's really unique. And it's like, well, it never went anywhere, but here's why we did it. So it's kind of, in some ways, it's almost like behind the scenes content that we can share with people about, one of our opportunities / failures in the last few years.
Okay. So let's say that I'm somebody who wants to start a business, or let's say I'm 5 years into my business and realize I need a refresh. What's the process to get started working with you and to, create and figure out my brand or to refresh my brand?
Yeah, I would say, first, obviously, super obvious, but reach out. But have those, as much as you can, the best that you can, have those identifiers kind of captured. So when you reach out and we start the conversation, you can say, "Hey, Mike, here's where I'm at in my business. Here's, it's nothing you need to defend or don't feel like you need to answer this from an area of justification. It's more about just surface level. Here's where I'm at in my business. Here's what I think are, some key decisions that I made to get us here, for right or wrong. Here's why it is what it is. Here's where I want to go." Because the gap or the difference or the conversation is going to evolve from that point of here's where I'm at and why to where I want to go. The gap between those two things, that's the part we got to figure out. That's the part where we have to say, well, okay, well, if you want to go this direction, why are you doing this? That's where we start to kind of unravel this, this bird's nest of information and try to figure out the direction. I would say, for anybody, whether they're a new business or an existing business, that's where it starts. I would even say, as an existing business, you should come back to that idea and that formula no less than once a year, but try to do it quarterly. Try to do it a couple times a year so that you remember why you're on track or why you're going a certain direction. Just to add one more thing to that, as you grow your team, you're going to bring people in and they're going to have ideas. They're going to have fresh ideas, and you're going to have people, their best intentions are to help you grow the business, but they're going to be tugging you in different ways. Somebody has to keep an eye on the road and make sure that it's still in line with the vision and where you want to go. And it's not that you can't adjust or evolve that vision, but somebody's got to be the beekeeper and the calibrator of that. So that's why you do those frequent check-ins. And that's why a lot of times it seems like a waste of time because maybe they don't care, or maybe they haven't been there that long or whatever it is. But that's why you try to share that overall vision with anybody that's involved with your business, because you want them to understand why you're pushing back sometimes, or why you're saying, "Nah, I don't think that's a good idea," or "Let's rethink that when we get to this point," because that goal, that direction, that vision, that's your roadmap. If you'd like to learn more about the Cyberdogz experience, check us out online at cyberdogzmarketing.com for updated blogs, new podcast episodes, examples of previous work, and the brands we have and are currently working with, and much, much more.